Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Women of Golf Show. I'm Ted Odorico, and joining me is LPGA professional Cindy Miller, and we are your hosts. We're broadcasting live every Tuesday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the blogtalkradio.com network, bringing you some of the best golfers, teacher professionals, and entrepreneurs helping to elevate women's golf. We're so glad you decided to join us this morning, so grab your coffee and let's get started. All right, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us this morning here on the Women of Golf Show. I'm Ted Odorico, and right alongside, of course, each and every week is my good friend and co-host, LPGA professional and Legends Tour player, Cindy Miller. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning. How are we?
I'm doing very well for a nice, sunny, beautiful Tuesday morning here in Florida. Always happy to see the sun up, especially since we had a lot of rain earlier in the season, but anyways, I'm not going to complain. I'm going to take it as one day at a time. We got a great show this morning, a little bit of a program change. Unfortunately, our guest on the second half, Paul Kaster, is not going to be able to make it. He had a little bit of a family emergency, nothing too serious, but a little something happened, and regrettably, he's not going to be able to join us this morning, but he will be back on, as I understand, he's been rescheduled for June 11th, so we'll get him back on for that, and we're glad that, again, it's nothing too serious, but unfortunately he's not going to be able to join us. But we're going to be joined by Cindy's son, Jamie Miller, is going to be calling in the second half. And, of course, we're going to start things off here in just a moment with our good friend, Zach Sepanik, the Symetra Tours media and public relations official. He's going to be joining us here in just a moment to give us an update on what's been happening for 2019 so far here on the tour. But, Cindy, anyways, what's new and happening in your world?
Well, I got to go to Hollywood last week. I felt that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went to Hollywood for the LPGA Executive Committee meeting, and we stayed right by Hollywood Boulevard, so I could see out my window all the little stars of Hollywood. It was pretty cool. Very cool. Now, we didn't go to the golf course where the tour event was. We just stayed in the hotel and had meetings and walked 4 blocks and had dinner and took pictures. But I thought I was pretty cool, so that was nice.
Did you do a little shopping while you were there?
I did not. I mean, I'm telling you, we were like all day long. I got off the plane. I met him for dinner. We had meetings from 8 until 5:30. We had dinner at 6:30. We went to bed. I got up at 3:30 in the morning and flew home. Thank you very much.
Now, see, that's
one of the things. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that's the difference. That's the difference between the men's meeting and the women's meeting. The women's meeting, they get off the plane, they go and they have meetings all day, and then they get back on the plane and go home. The men, they probably would have played golf for a few hours. They probably would have had a few drinks and a few meals here and there, and then they would have talked for 15 minutes. That would have been their meeting.
Good point. Well, we were with Mike Wan, so we couldn't mess up. We had to be we're the leadership, LPGA leadership team in the executive committee, which is all the presidents of all the sections.
Right.
So we were with Mike Wan and Vicki Getz-Ackerman and Kathy Milthorpe and Liz Moore, the chief legal officer, and then the president, Marvel, who we had on the show. So we're making changes and differences in the lives of 1,700 teaching professionals.
Very good. Obviously some time well spent. All right, so we're going to bring on our good friend here, Zach Sepanik. As I mentioned, he is the Symetra Tours media and public relations official and has all the buzz, if you will, on the Symetra Tour. So let's bring him out, Cindy, and we'll start the morning show.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
We're doing well. How are you doing, Zach?
Not too bad. Got in back into Daytona last night about 1:30, so a little tired, but get a couple days to recharge and then start stretch of 8 straight tournaments. So,
wow,
getting the battery recharged.
Yeah. Well, listen, just another quick note too, Zach, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you actually had the Murphy USA El Dorado shootout last weekend, and of course the winner was going to join us this morning, but unfortunately she had another engagement. But she's going to be on next week, correct?
Yep. Sydney Clanton, who won the Murphy USA El Dorado shootout on Sunday, will join you guys on Tuesday of next week.
Awesome.
Perfect. All right, so give us a little bit of update. How's the season been looking so far?
Season has gone really well. We've had some good winners, tough competition. I would say it's just been a collective difference from last year. Our number one player right now has, I want to say, about roughly $46,000 in season earnings, and she hasn't cashed a winner's paycheck. But
oh, wow.
that total of what she's made is greater than what 2013 Player of the Year PK Conkerpan made. So if that doesn't show the growth of what the Symetra Tour has made, and she's only made 4 starts out here. 4 starts, 5 total events for us this year, and she's already surpassed what the 2013 Player of the Year made. There's a chance for some pretty historic numbers. I'd say Madeline Sagstrom's season total earnings are in jeopardy, especially if some of the players consistently play out here instead of kind of going back and forth between the LPGA when they can and out here. But obviously that's still going to happen, so there's a chance it doesn't. But if they do stick out here, there's a good chance that there's some records set in terms of who makes how much at the end of the year. Had some great winners: Leona McGuire, Jillian Hollis, Alana Urell, Kelly Tan, and then Sydney Clanton. And Hollis and McGuire are kind of maybe that face of the next generation, if you will. Sydney Clanton's she's a veteran; she's been there and kind of got the monkey off her back on Sunday. Hollis and McGuire are definitely 2 contenders for the top 10, and they're going to have a furious charge, I think, throughout the year to get into that group. And if they are able to get to the LPGA next year, there's no doubt in my mind that they'll be 2 players to not only watch next year, but for years to come. Alana Urell won our first event, but she's out on the LPGA and made a couple of cuts, and I don't think we'll see her again this year. And then Kelly Tan went from making 2 cuts in 19 starts last year to a Symetra Tour champion earlier this year. So funny game how golf works, but you put the work in, it can reward you.
Right. Let me ask you, Zach. Go ahead, Cindy.
Go ahead.
Okay, all I was going to ask you was, do you notice each season, Zach, I know you've been with the Symetra now a few seasons, do you see a difference in the level and quality of player each season? Do you see a noticeable difference that they seem to be getting much better composed out in the golf course, just better quality of player? Not to say that previous players aren't good, but do you notice a difference each season when you come out there at the beginning of this tour season that the players just seem to be getting better and better and better?
Yeah, I'd say so, and especially with the advent of Q Series last year, that allowed more players a chance that have maybe just kind of settled in on the LPGA and not maybe made the biggest noise. It's kind of forced them to either reevaluate where they're going and how they're playing, or if they want to keep going, come down to the Symetra Tour and kind of find their groove again. And I think that has been a big stepping stone for competition on the Symetra Tour, with having those kind of players who have maybe played a few years on the LPGA. now coming down and getting a chance to get their feet under them again.
Right. Cindy, go ahead.
So I agree with you, and I believe it's so important for someone who's been there and maybe lost their game, may have some injuries, loses their card, but doesn't want to give up on their dream, like Juliet, not sure how to say her name, Julieta Granada.
Julieta.
In the playoff with, she was in the playoff with Sydney. And my husband and I do boot camps in Orange County in Orlando, and we see her there a lot practicing with her mom. And last year we spoke to her. I had a bunch of kids with me. I do a junior boot camp. And it's so important for somebody like that who's played on the tour for a long time. I think she's even won a major, or she's won a tournament.
She's won, yeah. She won back in 2005 on the Symetra tour, and then she won the 2006 ADT championship. Yeah,
so it doesn't mean she can't play. Same thing as Morgan Pressel. I mean, Morgan, for a long time, it's like, okay, where'd Morgan go? And you're just in the background working on your game, planting more seeds, trying to get better, but it doesn't mean you're washed up and done. So I think the Symetra Tour is so important to these players because it gives them a place to play, and the purses are so much better than they ever were before. So there's really another opportunity, which is great.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I think also, too, Cindy, just to sort of piggyback what you were talking about, Morgan Pressel as an example, I think golf, you kind of get in a rhythm. For a few seasons, you're kind of in that rhythm where everything's sort of the ebb and flow, if you will, it can be very high, and then maybe the next season or so, it's not so high. And a lot of people say, well, maybe they're in a funk, and I don't think it's really a funk. I just think it's not. I mean, yourself, you'll get out there and you might play a couple of good rounds or even a couple of good holes, and then all of a sudden you feel like you're off your rhythm a little bit. And I think that's what happens to a lot of players. And I think as outsiders or spectators, they don't really appreciate and understand that these people are still playing at that high level, but it's just sometimes it's just not going to, again, that ebb and flow is just not going to be there every day or every week. And sometimes there's going to be a moment where your rhythm's going to be off a little bit, and that's why what they're working on. Would you agree?
Was that
that was you?
Cindy?
That was Cindy. No, Cindy.
Yeah.
Well, both.
Well, absolutely. I mean, again, and once you have, you can have a little doubt, you can have some apprehension, and then the next step is fear, and then the next step is dread. And again, depending on the team around you, to be able to come back and believe in yourself, it takes a lot of work. And it takes a lot of it takes a team behind you that believe in you, that don't criticize, condemn, and, what are you doing, and why can't you play? And so God bless those girls that don't give up. I think, like Morgan Pressel, it was funny because we were at dinner last week in L.A., and Vicki Getz-Ackerman was sitting across the table. I go, how's Morgan Pressel? And this was before the tournament even started. And she said she's doing really well. She's working on her game. She's working with Martin Hall. So, again, you haven't heard from her. And some people, backdoor people that criticize or gossip might say, she's all washed up. She's too old. She can't do this. She can't come back. Yeah, really?
Right.
Okay. She just finished 9 under par. So you don't know what they're doing in the background working on their game. So I'm proud of all of them for not giving up. I think it's awesome. Yeah,
I agree. Zach, very quickly, let me just ask you, and then Cindy, you can go ahead again. Do you notice, in addition to the physical, I asked you a few moments ago about, do you notice a difference with the players coming out, in this season or each season it gets a little bit different? What about the mental toughness? Do you notice that the girls that are playing out there today seem to be a little bit more mentally tough than maybe previous years? And if so, what do you think that is equated to?
Yeah, I think there's just a different focus level. I mean, a lot of these girls have come up the ranks, and golf is all they know. And I think it speaks to just kind of the culture ingrained with it. There's a good amount of players that have settled in and know the ins and outs, and they know the process each week, and it allows them to maybe be a little more relaxed and a little more comfortable, whereas some of the new players, or maybe just some of the more focused players, I guess that's not really the word I'm looking for, but that's the one that comes to mind. They're kind of maybe a little more in the zone, and maybe with windshield or blindfolds on each side, and just a kind of tunnel vision throughout the week.
Right.
And that may be contributed to just how they've grown in the game and how they've learned the game, or maybe contributed to their approach. But I definitely would say, especially with the amount of new players that we've had come through, I think this past week we had upwards of 70 players playing that course for the first time, and our field was 144 players. So,
right,
you get a good mix, obviously, but there's plenty of players that are definitely kind of a new era focus, if you will.
Right. Yeah, and I mean that's basically 50% of the field are coming out for the first time. Cindy, go ahead.
So where are these 70 new players coming from?
A lot of it's, college, but we also just had probably just a different field. We were dipping on the priority list into players that had just finished, had just made it through stage 1 of qualifying school last week. We had 2 weeks off prior, 1 tournament in Arkansas, and then we're off this week. I'd probably say there's probably a good 15 to 20 players that play with us consistently that are playing a couple LET events this week, and then another 15 to 20 players that just took advantage of the kind of free stretch, if you will, and to heal up or just get some practice in or spend some time with family and friends before we get into our 8-week stretch here. So we're definitely not going to have that same field going forward. I think maybe once more the rest of the year. But I think it was just the circumstances of how the schedule played out and where it fell in the season.
Wow, that's a long stretch.
Yeah, we're gearing up for it.
Yeah, I don't think people appreciate just how 8 weeks doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're thinking about playing tournament golf 8 weeks in a row, that's tough. That's definitely grueling physically and mentally for a lot of the girls. Plus, they've got to travel back and forth to various courses, and that can add to the mental pressures as well. Let me ask you another question. Something that recently popped up in the golf media, and I wanted to ask you this because I remember, I think it was a couple of years ago we had you first on. You talked about how you really help a lot of the new girls that are coming out on tour kind of get ready for how to handle themselves in the media and sort of in a social environment, because that's something that they're really not used to yet. It was in the news recently. Lexi Thompson announced that she's going to stay away from social media. She's had some negative feedback, and this has obviously become a growing trend in general. Do you talk to some of the newer girls, particularly when they come out, that maybe are involved in social media, to sort of, not necessarily stay away from it, but not read into a lot of what they might hear? Because, there's people that follow them on tour and things like that. And if they're having some bad, weeks or bad rounds, unfortunately, there's people out there. Do you have that conversation with them, or do you make yourself available if they need to have that conversation on how to handle those situations?
Yeah, I make myself available, and I tend to err on the light side of that, and I don't really. I mean, I don't know what they're going through with that.
Right.
And I'm not a therapist, and I don't know the best way to handle that kind of stuff. So I tend to, if I'm going to send that to the higher powers that's a bigger issue than what I can help with. But I'll offer that if they need help, or if they are getting something said to them on social channels, I'll help them as best I can. Luckily, I don't really hear about it much. I mean, I'm sure it happens, but
right.
Well,
I think a lot.
And at the same time, I've told them, it's the day and age we live in, unfortunately, where you have trolls and mom and dad's basement still who are sitting there saying one thing or another, and I think it kind of goes back to your question earlier, where you see a focus or a different kind of set of devotion to the game with some of these newer players. And I mean, if you're a golfer, you have to have thick skin, especially being able to bounce back in tough situations, or you have thick skin and a great poker face. And I think those translate into blocking out that kind of noise and realizing that it's the last thing that you need to be listening to.
Right. Well, I know that from some of the young ladies that we've had the pleasure of talking with, both Cindy and I here on the show, a lot of them really are not big into social media, to be honest. I mean, they certainly have a presence, and they certainly post some great pictures up from the tournaments and that, on their Instagram or what have you. But they're really not, as you said, they're not really dialed in on their social media. But I know that this is obviously, anytime you're in the public eye, you're going to get that kind of feedback. And I was just curious if you've had a lot, and obviously you're not getting a lot of feedback, which is a good thing, I guess, that they're not really paying much attention to that. And I guess, there are some that get sucked into it a little bit more than others. And I was just curious because I was kind of surprised when I read the article the other day, and she's just kind of backing away because she's just, kind of getting bombarded with a lot of negative. And it goes to really the point that you were, mentioning, Cindy, about sort of this backdoor, critics that are saying, well, so-and-so's washed up or their game's over. And, when you're in the public eye and you're hearing that surfacing up and bubbling up, it can be a little daunting, I'm sure, for some at times. What do you think, Cindy?
I totally agree. And it's funny, I was on a couple of the big breaks and then did some golf with style shows, and there was the message board. And of course I started to read it, and who's the old lady, and she's a Barbie slayer, and she should go home, and all, again, and you're like, whoa, who is this person? And you don't want to get in a fight with some idiot that's, sitting in his mother's basement who's 42 and doesn't have a job. But the point is it is hurtful, and you've got to be careful. And because you can start to believe that. My thing was minuscule compared to what these girls are going through. But, again, you have to have thick skin, and you got to, understand that the committee of they is not as important as you. So you got to blow it off.
Right.
And a lot of those people, too, are, and I think that's one of those things where Lexi not saying Lexi doesn't have thick skin, but I think part of it is there's gotta be that sense of, I think that it just goes back to kind of how she feels about herself, because she's one of the greatest players that's going to have ever teed it up in the women's professional game. And there's no reason for her to ever listen to what somebody says about her in a negative way, because of all the good she's done for the game of women's golf, how she's helped grow it, especially here on American soil, and the talent that she exploits week in and week out. She should be able to look in the mirror every morning and realize she's not only a champion, but she's a great athlete, and she's more than that. She's a great role model and a great individual, having met her on several occasions.
With a big heart. I must, on the other side of this, I've got to warn parents not to push. Because
Yeah.
when you have a child that their whole self-worth comes from hitting a good shot and looking at mommy and daddy smiling, and then maybe, dropping their head in disgust when they don't hit it as good, it's just pretty scary. So I'm warning parents out there, stop pushing your children, because you're going to make them all get screwed up, and that's not what your job is or mission is. And I'm sure that's not what you want to do. And I'm not saying that happened to Lexi. I witness it all the time because I teach a lot of kids. And when the parents' self-worth comes from what their kids shoot, that's pretty disgusting. So
yeah, I
just had to mention that.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And I think, and I agree, Zach, what you said. I think Lexi knows that she's a champion in that. I just think that, when you're in the spotlight like her, or, even like a Tiger Woods and that, you're always going to get cheap shots, whether it's from within the industry or with outside. And I was just curious if you get a lot of feedback or a lot of conversation with some of the girls on the Symetra Tour about that type of thing, that, how do I handle this, or what do you think about this? I'm getting a lot of chatter over here because I didn't play well, the last 2 or 3 weeks, or I haven't won a tournament yet. And I was just curious if you'd had a lot of feedback. And I'm glad that obviously they're not. And I think, like you said, you've got to, when you go out there week in, week out, you've got to put blinders on. You've got to focus on the task at hand. And you just got to, sort of deflect the naysayers. Don't get involved. Don't get sucked into the conversation. Just let them say that. Because really 90% of the problem with a lot of those people is when you respond to them, that's when they ramp it up. So if you just ignore it, and, yes, it might be hurtful, you just ignore it, and your own self-worth, based on how you perceive yourself, that's what's going to carry you through, day in, day out. Just a final thing I wanted to mention real quick, and then we'll let you go, Zach, 'cause I know you've got to get well-deserved rest for that 8-week sprint you've got coming up. The IOA group is one of the big sponsors on the Symetra Tour, and you got the Invitational coming back to Georgia May 9th to 11th. This is their second season, I think, for that particular event. How's the field look? I know it's a little early yet, but it looks like it's going to be another successful event.
Yeah, this will be a good event, a good test. I think the winning score there was 4 under last year, so nothing easy. The field's got their work cut out for them, but we got some great players who will be teeing it up at Atlanta National Golf Club starting next Thursday through Saturday. We've got Kelly Tan and Sydney Clanton, both of whom have won this year. Jillian Hollis, a winner as well, and Leona Maguire also in there. So 4 of our 5 winners will be in the field. We'll get back to kind of normalcy, if you will, with more of the top tier of players coming back, and should be a good week. Atlanta National Golf Club's a tough track, and especially coming off of Mystic Creek in El Dorado. I think they'd like a flat course one of these weeks so that they can score pretty low, but that won't be happening for at least a couple more events.
Very good. Well, Zach, we want to thank you for joining us and giving us a quick update this morning on the show. We appreciate it as always, and we look forward to having the winner again from the Murphy USA El Dorado next week on the show. So as always, thank you for all of your tireless efforts, both on the tour and off, and we appreciate you very much for helping us expose some of these young ladies here on the show.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Have a great day.
Have a good time.
All right. Thanks. All right, that was Zach Sepanik, the Symetra Tour's media and public relations official, giving us a quick update of the season so far, and he's got a lot happening. So, as I mentioned earlier, we had a little bit of a program change. Unfortunately, our scheduled guest this morning was going to be Paul Kaster, and unfortunately, he had to back out this morning due to a little family situation at home, but he is going to be coming back on June 11th. But thanks to our ever resourceful partner in crime, Cindy Miller, she has managed to get us a great guest for the second half. So, Cindy, I'm going to let you introduce our special guest, and then we'll bring him on.
Well, about 5 minutes before the show started, my son, we have 3 beautiful children. My middle child, Jamie Miller, called me just to say, hello, Mom, what are you doing? And I said, hey, you want to be on the radio show? So Jamie Miller has wanted to be a golfer since probably he was 1 or 2 years old. He used to sit in the playroom watching golf tournaments and saying, don't come bother me, I'm in my office. He, I'm not kidding, that's what he used to say. And so he is now a grown man, and he played college golf as a walk-on at The Ohio State University, and then he transferred to Augusta State, where he won a tournament against Webb Simpson. And then he tried to play on the tour, and then he had a bad boat accident, and then he decided to use his finance degree, and he now works for UBS, and he's a plus, what are you, a plus 3 or 4 or 5? Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Anyway, well, now we can.
Yeah.
You got to take yourself off mute. But anyway, he just got done playing in the Coleman Invitational. He won the New York State Men's Mid-Amateur Championship twice. He won it this past summer. So please welcome my middle child, Jamie Miller. Good morning.
How are we all doing?
We're good.
Good morning, Jamie, and welcome. This
Thank
is
you.
Ted.
Thank you. Thanks for having
We
me.
appreciate you coming on last minute like that. I'm glad your mother was able to hoodwink you onto the show. We appreciate you coming on and filling in some time. Cindy, let me just very quickly jump in real quick here, and then I'll let you take over. Tell us a little bit about your experience playing college golf. For a lot of people that maybe have children out there, parents that might be listening to the show, that are, their kid has been playing, some competitive golf along the way, and they're really wanting to maybe take that next level into collegiate golf. What advice would you have for both the parents and for the child themselves that's got that in the back of their mind?
Yeah, so I'll just I'll give you a couple things. And I'm on the board for the Western New York PGA Reach Foundation, and we had a meeting with the Western New York PGA, and we're talking about college golf. And what I thought was cool this past week, I was down in Juno Beach, Florida, and 2 of my teammates from Ohio State were down there and with us playing in the event. And it was kind of cool because it was guys that I've known for now, 15, almost 20 years, which is crazy to think. But one of the things with college golf is, it's a lot. I mean, it depends on what level you want to get to, and how bad you want it. One of my things was I wanted to play at the best possible school I could go to. My mom, reiterated that I did walk on at Ohio State, earned a scholarship for my second year, and then transferred to Augusta State. And all of that was kind of this belief that, I was wanting to play on the PGA Tour at some point, and I wanted to play at the best school possible. That being said, I have a lot of friends that didn't do that. They went to a school that they felt like they could play right away. As my mom would say, I can be a little bit of a jerk, and I like the challenge. So a little bit familiar with her story that, she walked on as well. So we kind of have that same fighting mentality. And it served both of us well. We both had a lot of success, but it's not always what's right for everybody. I was actually texting with a good friend whose son's getting recruited to play college football right now, and he wants his son to go to the best education school possible, and of course the son wants to go to the best football school possible. And it's really just it's kind of a thing. I got recruited by some really good education schools, and I'm pretty confident that if my mom and dad forced me to go to one of them, I would have hated them probably for life. They let me kind of create my own thing and do that and go to Ohio State, and then ultimately transfer to Augusta State, which we were a top 10 D1 team. Everybody's path is a little bit differently, and you got to assess that. Obviously education is a huge part of it. I will say at the top schools in Division I golf, you're both athlete and student. Obviously student comes first, but most of the guys that go to those top schools are really trying to make it to the next level. So it's just a little bit different than some of the mid-major schools where they're focused a lot more. Their travel schedules aren't as crazy. I mean, we had one time where we missed 3 weeks straight of class That's pretty hard when you're a finance major, missing 3 weeks of class.
Right.
So it was tough.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine. Cindy, go ahead.
Tell us about the regimen and maybe the difference between D1 and D3 and workouts and sports psychologists. What might different schools offer student athletes?
Yeah, I think I can really only speak for D1. I know a lot of guys that played in the D3 level, and it is completely different. I mean, we worked out at Ohio State 5 days a week at 6 a.m. in the morning. I would go to class from 8 until about 11:30, drive to the golf course, play or practice till about 5. I would have class from 6:45 to like 9 o'clock at night, and you would repeat that every day. And then, from a access standpoint, we had athletic trainers, we had education coaches who would work with, all the sports teams. Our guy worked with the football, hockey, and golf teams. And then from a sports psychology standpoint, I'll never forget at Ohio State, we had a guy who I was able to go see, and he really helped me with something where I was struggling with the driver off the tee, and he basically said to me, what's your favorite club in your bag? And I said, my 1-iron. He's like, how often do you practice it? I go, never. He goes, well, stop practicing your driver, and gave me a couple other tips. And so it was really, really nice to be able to have that. I also had a little issue with some MRSA, which, obviously the athletic staff will take care of you. There's doctors there. I don't know for D3, but I would imagine it's not as hands-on as it was at a top D1 school. But the schedule is definitely very intense. I know some guys up here in Buffalo that play at Canisius College, which is a D1 golf team, and I would say their schedule isn't quite as intense as we had it. But again, at the end of the day, it is how much you want to put into it. We would work, we would practice and play all weekend. Some guys on our team didn't play and practice on the weekend. They didn't have to. If you really want to get good, it's really up to you how bad you want it.
Right.
Well
said. So, Jamie, let me ask you something then, just so that people understand. There's sort of a conception, if you will, that if you're playing college golf or you want to play college golf, that the next stepping stone is obviously to make it out on tour. But that's not necessarily the case. I mean,
Yep.
Obviously people want to, we all want to swing with the best of them. But for somebody that maybe doesn't really have aspirations to, play with the best out in the PGA Tour or another tour, that doesn't necessarily mean that they shouldn't, if they do have a passion for golf, that it wouldn't be beneficial for them to be part of a college team, correct?
Yeah, and I think one thing, I know my mom dealt with this a little bit going away from school, is first and foremost, if let's say you were going to go to where golf isn't as big of a deal and you just want to get a good education and you're going to do it that way, having a golf team gives you automatic, I don't want to say friends, but it gives you people that you have a common interest. Some of my best friends, even looking back to junior golf today, are still the guys that I grew up playing golf with. So that's pretty important to say too. I think what ultimately golf does and why it's such a great sport is that anybody can do it. And if you do it at a decently high level, if you play any level of college golf, that's a high level of golf, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that's a big thing.
Right.
What it does for you in your career, obviously it gives you credibility as a student athlete. There's a lot of stuff on LinkedIn that talks about, companies wanting to hire athletes because it just, to get to that level of athletic ability, you do have to work. I don't care how gifted you are, you have to work a little bit harder than probably most people, the regular college students working, which is really important because when you go to a job interview, if you actually look back at some of the things that you've done, from your athletic perspective, whether it's D1, D2, or D3, or NAIA, you've shown that you've put in the work ethic, and that's a huge thing for your career. And then obviously golf is a really important thing because pretty much anybody in business either plays or has people at their company that plays at on a regular basis. So you have opportunities to go out and meet people that you would never get to meet and spend 4 to 5 hours with them. I was reading an article over the weekend. It was George Roberts from KKR, which is a large private equity firm. He talked about that, golf, and what it means to people. And anybody can play. Everybody's at the same level. At the end of the day, you have a handicap. You start the first hole the same way that anybody else starts the first hole. And that's what makes it such a great game. You can do it for your entire life, and you can use it for business a lot. I mean, I flew home with a guy on Sunday on his private plane, and the only reason I knew him was because I play golf, and he likes me because I play golf with him.
Right. Yeah, your mom mentioned that. And which brings me to another thing, you sort of touched on this. It gives you an opportunity to meet a lot of different people. Talk about some of the people that you've met that golf, and obviously, your academics have helped get you to a high level of education and obviously into some good career choices. But talk about what golf, who some of the people that it's exposed you to, and obviously at some point it's helped you either in business or just in life in general. But talk about some of the people. I mean, brag a little bit.
Well, I'll start. One of my a guy who's become a good friend of mine, I was with on Saturday morning having breakfast down in Florida. He's an agent on tour, and he has some guys. My mom referenced Webb Simpson, who I played a lot of college golf with. He represents Webb. They got Jimmy Walker. I played a lot with Dustin Johnson. Dustin actually rode with me from Rochester, New York to the Northeast Amateur in Rhode Island, in Providence, Rhode Island, at Wannamoisa. And it's interesting because on the way we stopped at a bar and watched Phil Mickelson choke the U.S. Open at Winged Foot. And I think if you fast forward less than 10 years, Dustin ultimately choked the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach and then had redemption a few years later at Oakmont. So I'd sent him a note after that and just saying how cool it was, and he responded, yeah, crazy world. So there's guys like that, and then there's some other, I have a very good friend who played, Brad Richards, who played, 14, 15 years in the NHL. He won a Conn Smythe Award for the MVP of the playoffs. He's won 2 Stanley Cups. I was just texting with him yesterday. He played an event down in Tampa at Palm Seal with a good friend of his, Alan Mesra, and they won the Pro-Am division. So, golf brings you together with guys like that that you wouldn't get to meet. Another guy who I've become pretty good friends with, a guy named Kyle Williams, who just retired from the Buffalo Bills. Played 13 seasons with the Bills, and actually he just qualified for the USGA 4-ball. That's going to be at Bandon Dunes in May. But I got to meet and hang out with him because of golf. There's another guy, Josh Allen, who's the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills now, just joined my club in Buffalo, Craigburn Golf Club. I haven't met Josh yet, but I'm sure I'll see him out there. So it really is a way to, kind of introduce you to a new world of people. And then if you talk to business, I mean, if you wanted to get that deep, there's some of the people that I've met are some of the wealthiest people in the world, and you meet them because of golf. And it's really, really cool. And they're the titans of industry. And when you pull up CNBC, I see a lot of their names pop up, and it's a really neat thing.
Well, and the interesting thing, very quickly, and then Cindy, I'm going to bounce it back to you very quickly, Jamie, just to let the listeners know that not only these top titans, even though they may be very proficient in their business, some of them are not all that necessarily that great out in the golf course. So you don't have to be a fantastic player necessarily to be out in golf and meeting some of these people. You just have to be part of the group, and part of the group means getting out there and just having fun and a good time, right?
Yeah, I'll reiterate on that too. I mean, most of them aren't that good at golfers, but they love the game. And the reason they love the game
right.
is because anybody can play it, and anybody can, with a handicap, they can compete against somebody like me, even though their golf game may not be on the same level. They can compete because they have a handicap. And really a lot of them, I mean, if you went down the list of the members at some of the big clubs, like in Augusta, I mean, it's a who's who of industry. I literally have CNBC up right now, and Warren Buffett's on there, and Warren Buffett's a member at Augusta, as is Bill Gates. If you go there, if you're ever lucky enough to go there, you see their names on lockers, and you sit there and go, wow, what a place. But yeah, golf allows you to do that, which I don't know any other sport that does.
Yeah, I agree. Cindy, go ahead.
So I'm going to shift states here a little bit, and we're going to talk about showing color and emotional control on the golf course. So, Ted, as we we discussed, Jamie and I happen to be two peas in a pod, and we're both high D personalities, which is driven, competitive, control freaks. And those type of people typically have tempers on the course. And it's funny because one of my students yesterday asked me if people ever throw clubs in anger on the golf course. And I just laughed. And I said, yes, and you really need to know and learn how to throw a club so you don't break the shaft. So Jamie used to have, well, he still has a temper, but he's learned how to control it a little bit. Can you tell us how many clubs you've broken while showing color, or do you choose not to admit this?
Well, as anyone would say, I don't know that I've ever intentionally broken one from showing color. I've seen a lot of guys break it over their knees. Most of mine are because of faulty throw, where I didn't throw it properly, that it breaks. and I only say that because I'm too cheap to pay for it to get fixed. So I don't think I've ever intentionally sat there and said I'm going to break this. But I've probably had 5 to 10 or maybe a couple more that have broken out of an anger-driven thing. But I haven't forcefully just broken one over my knee like some people will do.
So let me ask you this. Why or how did you curb your behavior? And when did you realize you just can't act like this on the golf course?
Well, it was probably, like anybody, it's when your emotions take over. It's not, I don't think, again, I would say I never intentionally said I'm going to break this. So it's a little bit different than some people that I know that do intentionally break a club. Mine is more of I can't control my own emotions at all, and then the only way to let go is to either throw it or bang it or whatever. I had somebody once tell me that they said that I looked quite a bit like a jerk the way I was acting, and I never really thought about it from anybody looking at me and seeing the way I was acting and thinking I looked bad. And most people don't want to look like jerks, but that was really, nobody really ever told me that until that time. And everybody you'd say, oh, you can't let your emotions get the best of you, blah blah blah. But until you actually see somebody tell you that you look like a jerk, that's kind of when it stopped for me. I can still get very angry out there, but I generally try to keep it at bay. But it is difficult, and it's a process. But until I got told
better
an
the
idiot I looked like.
Better the golf club than somebody else. I always look at it that way. Better you break the golf club than you hit somebody.
See, that's why I loved hockey, because
Cindy,
I was allowed to hit people.
That's right. You can take the frustrations out in hockey or football or something like that.
Yeah.
That's why they have contact sports. So, Jamie, let me ask you something, because your mom's obviously mentioned before you came on air, and you've talked a little bit about it. The fact that you've got a good job. You're with UBS, and obviously it's a very prominent company. Talk to the listeners, if you will, a little bit. You already mentioned it. Obviously, meeting a lot of great and powerful people in business is one of the perks of being in golf. But for those business owners out there, especially women, because women are still kind of, they're testing the waters a little bit as business executives. Talk a little bit about the benefits of being out on the golf course as opposed to, maybe just making a 20-minute, sales presentation or sales call. What it does, being out on the golf course, how it helps you gauge your future customers.
Yeah, so I will say, being able to spend 4 to 5 hours with somebody is really, really important. There is, I don't want to say an element to it that you have to be willing and able to ask questions, but it's just like having a sales call where really all you're trying to do is find out, somebody's pain, where there's somewhere that you may be able to help them. And I will say that in 4 or 5 hours, if you, unless you're talking about yourself the whole time, if you can't figure out, where somebody's pain is and where you may be able to help them, and I will say from my perspective, being at a great firm, there's a lot that we can do for somebody. It doesn't necessarily have to be their individual investments. It might be their corporate cash, it might be their their benefit package that they want to have somebody take a look at. There's a lot you can figure out in 4 hours, and it's really listening. I know in sales they say, you have 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. Shut up and listen and watch them. But what it does is it allows you to have the ability just to have conversations with somebody. And I know for a lot of women, they're always scared that I'm not very good, or I don't want to hold them up.
Right.
I can tell you that nobody will care about how bad you play. Nobody cares about if you can't hit the ball. They like that you're out there trying, right? Because again, that's part of the element of understanding you want to be out there. And the only thing I'll say is, as long as you don't play slow, if you happen to be playing poorly or something, feel free to pick it up. I would even urge a lot of guys. I've played a lot with guys that sit out there and it takes us 5.5 hours to play, and I'm like, you just pick it up. It's not it's not the end of the world to have that, and most people will respect you for that. But it really gives you that time to get to know somebody and find out where you, from your business perspective, can really help them. And at the end of the day, that's where you're going to get the best sales, is by helping somebody to solve a problem.
Well, and it also allows you an opportunity to decide whether you even want to do business with these people, whether they're a potential customer for you, or whether it's a fit in another way. I mean, there's again, not to go back to the point your mother just made about being aggressive out in the golf course with anger management, if you will.
Yep.
But you can learn a lot from watching how people handle themselves out in the golf course. Whether, hey, I don't know if I want to deal with this individual or not.
Yep.
They're whipping clubs all the time, or they're cursing a lot and just seem to be constantly angry. And it's just a game after all. I mean, it's a game.
Yep.
You're meant to there to have fun, and it's an interaction. One other thing I want you to just talk about too is, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to add one thing. I had played with somebody recently, a guy who had sold his business for a fair bit of money, and it would have been a great client. And we played golf, and at the end I said, that is not somebody I want to work with. I was completely turned off by every single thing that the person did, and no matter how much money he had, it's not worth it to me to work with somebody like that. It just wasn't. So you do learn that very quickly on a golf course. There's no doubt.
Right, and it's a good test of morals too. I mean, you see people
Absolutely.
If they're cheating a lot on the golf course, more than likely they're cheating in business. And again, that's somebody you maybe want to stay clear of. And you're not going to get that in a few-minute phone call in most cases. I mean, sometimes,
Correct.
unless you're clairvoyant, but out in the golf course, that gives you plenty of time to really ascertain, and both ways, for them to get a chance to see, hey, this is a company I want to do business with, and Jamie's handles himself well, and I want to continue this relationship further. And like you said, you develop lifelong friends. Cindy, I'm going to give you, since we've got a few minutes left, to give you the last moment to sort of wrap up with Jamie and any final thoughts or questions that you have for him, and then we'll let him get to back to work.
So tell our listeners, which might be parents of junior golfers or women who aren't sure if they want to learn to play the game of golf, why they should continue to pursue their potential here.
I think a lot of what we just talked about. It's a game that you can do for your entire life. It's a game you can do with your entire family. Let's say you have a young family or whatever, getting the kids involved is really important. It teaches them a lot of life lessons. It's a way for you to network. It's a way for you to get to know more people. It's a great sport that opens a lot of doors, but also it's something that you can enjoy with anybody and everybody. If somebody plays golf, you can go out and have a good time with them. It allows you to do really anything you want. It takes you some really great places if you wanted to. There's a lot of places you can travel in the world that are unbelievably beautiful that you may have never seen without wanting to go play golf there. So it really allows you to do, in my opinion, the way I see it, is anything you'd like. And it's totally up to you how you want to play. If you want to play the 9, wine, and dine, that's fine. If you want to play 18 holes, that's fine. But it allows you to get outside, have a great day, meet some new friends, meet some old friends, and have a great time.
And I'm going to add one thing. I think you can play until you croak as long as you can walk and move. And I think that's important. One of the oldest people I've ever had come take a lesson was 89. And again, you can play forever. So Ted, close us off.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. With everything you said, Jamie, and it's it's something that your mom and I have talked about many times, on the show is, you have to just first you have to ask yourself the question why. Why do I want to play, and sort of ascertain the motives behind it. Are you looking to get into a competitive mode, if you will, or you just want to go out and have a good time with friends and family and that sort of thing. So once you understand that, the reasons why, then you can sort of develop the building blocks. And I strongly urge, just to go back to what you said a few moments ago, Jamie, about, really doesn't matter how well you play in that. If you're somebody, male or female, that's out there, and maybe you're not a great golfer, maybe you've tried it a couple times, I strongly suggest that you reach out to your local teacher professional and take a few lessons just to understand the basics, and then they'll help put together a good solid plan to help you build from that. But if you want to understand the basics, it can open, literally, as Jamie mentioned and we've mentioned many times here in the program, it can literally open up a whole new world that you probably didn't realize was there. And at the very at the very onset, even if you're not a business person, you just want to go out and have fun, golf is a game, as we've all said, you can play well into your golden years and retirement and that. So, Jamie, we want to thank you for stopping by and adding to the content of the show. We appreciate it very much, and I'd love to have you back on the show again sometime.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Anytime.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for filling in, my dear.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Thank you very much, Jamie. You have a great day.
All right, you too. You guys. See ya.
Bye-bye.
All right. That was Jamie Miller, part of the Miller family. Great young man. You did a great job raising him, I'll tell you that. Very, very, very smart, very with it, and obviously enjoying the fruits of his hard work. And that's really what it's all about. It's what you get out of it, what you put into life. And obviously he recognized that very early on by plunking himself down in his in front of the television watching golf tournaments. He recognized where his path was going to be, and he's pursued his if you will. And Cindy, we're going to have a great show again next week. We appreciate it. And again, we apologize that our good friend Paul Kaster wasn't able to make it this morning, but he will be joining us on June 11th. And we've got some other great guests. We'll have the winner from the Murphy USA El Dorado shootout next week on the show. She'll be starting things off, and then another great guest to follow up. So on behalf of Cindy Miller, I'm Ted Roderico. Thank you very much for joining us this morning on the Women of Golf. God bless. Thanks, Cindy.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening this morning to the Women of Golf Show. Tune in live each week by visiting blogtalkradio.com/Women of Golf, or on any of these social media platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, CastBox, TalkStream Live, and of course Spotify. If you can't join us live, check out our on-demand section for previously aired broadcasts. To get updates for future shows and upcoming guests, you can follow us on Facebook at Women of Golf. You can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO and Cindy at Cindy Miller Golf. Please remember to join us next week on the Women of Golf Show. See you next time. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.